and postgraduate programs. Among them, we have several doctoral programs offered jointly with universities in the UK, France, Switzerland, Malaysia, and mainland China. Well, the Institute of Advanced Management Development, AMD in short, offers advanced management programs for top executive development with a view to making contribution to the growth of human capital. Internationally, we work with top-notch universities and institutions for various executive programs and study tours. AMD also aims to provide platform for renowned scholars and management experts from around the world to interact with our members. For these purposes, the DNA was established to provide support to doctoral students globally, to facilitate discussions and to enhance learning and networking opportunities in relation to doctoral research activities. Since June 2020, we've arranged webinars on research proposal and the problems you encounter in the research process. We've talked about literature review, ways to theorize your managerial experiences, how to get your papers published, what you can do to engage industry for impactful research, testing your hypothesis by quantitative methods. We've also discussed some research agendas on accounting for sustainability and recently the use of meta-analysis. More live webinars are in the pipeline, so stay tuned. Now let's focus on today's session. Professor For is the Vice President of the Executive Board of the Community for European Research and Innovation for Security. Among his long list of achievements and credentials, his clients included the UN, UNESCO, EU, and the WTO governments and international companies. He has taught at Sorbonne University and is the visiting professor in Harvard Law School, New York University, Johns Hopkins, Oxford and China, Europe International Business School, Business University, Jiao Tong University, and Fudan, etc. He is quoted as one of the 2,000 outstanding scholars of the 21st century by the International Biographical Center, Cambridge. Professor For has authored, co-authored, and edited 23 books, over 140 articles, and his works were published in 12 languages. Professor For is referenced in the Diplomat's Dictionary published by the US Peace Prize. He is a member of the editorial board of major international journals. He also has considerable experience in China, and he has worked for government agencies in the context of crucial international negotiations and crisis situations. The list can go on and on, but I'll just stop here. And can I pass the floor to you, Professor For?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. So you can share your PowerPoint.
Good. So shall I start?
Yes, please.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm most pleased to join you for this short lecture. And the purpose of it is to give you a little flavor of what we do in either a training program of 3 days, 3 full days, or in teaching at a university in 1 semester. So you'll have a sample of the various issues we tackle when we deal with negotiation, and especially international negotiation. I would like to start with the definition of it. Strategic negotiation. Can you see the pinpoints?
No. Would you like to share your PowerPoint first, or would you like us to do so?
Yeah. Well, there is a PPT ready for all participants, except that I don't know. I had it on my desk. That's strange. What do we do?
You can click the share screen button.
I can lecture without it if you like.
Maybe Christine, would you please share the PowerPoint instead?
Has it? Yes, she has it.
Yeah.
Sure, no problem. Please wait a moment.
Okay. It was there, and all of a sudden it disappeared from my own desk. I don't know why. I cannot explain these fancy events from the technology.
Great. The PowerPoint is here, and
Yeah, so this is my, this is just the introduction, okay? We can move to the next one. It's good to know what we're talking about. What is negotiation? Many people talk about negotiation without knowing really how to use the word properly. It's a process. A negotiation is not an event, it's a process. It can be a long process, a short one. It can take 1 minute, it can take a couple of years. It's a process in which two or more parties search for a way to resolve their divergences. There are all sorts of divergences. We have to find an acceptable common position. There are soft ones, you know, people discuss about the color of a wall carpet in an office. It's not usually a big issue, hopefully not. Or tougher ones on in business, in management, on salaries, package, etc. And there are even much tougher ones, like ending a joint venture, strikes, hostages. I've been dealing with that type of issue sometimes, and it's really one of the toughest. Okay, let's go to the next. Thank you. Normally, when we look at any negotiation position, you have two parties, and we have to realize that the concern about the outcome of each one of the parties is essential to figure out the type of strategy we can use in a negotiation. If I have a concern, if I have, first of all, no concern for the outcome of the other, I have no concern for my own outcome, then there's no point even to negotiate. There's nothing to do. So it's inaction. If I have some concern about my own interest and none really for the other, I expect him to, I have an attitude which is contending. And if I have only concern for the other and not for me, which is very unusual, I mean, I would not recommend anybody to do that, especially representing a company. It would be suicidal. It's yielding in that case. But most of the time, when people come to negotiate, they have some concern for their own interest, and they have to take into account the interest of the other side. In that case, we have an attitude which is something like the central one, compromising. Now, we can go further, we can do better, and it would be to move to the northeast position, problem solving. I have a concern, of course, a strong concern for my own interest, but I care strongly about the interest of the other. It's the attitude is a problem-solving attitude. We look at the negotiation as a common problem we have to solve jointly. So this is the whole issue in reality, going from compromising to problem-solving, which means to turn a negotiation, which could be win-lose, into a negotiation that would be win-win. So we'll see that in a moment. But these are the 5 basic strategies that one has to face or choose whenever we enter the negotiation room. Let's see the next slide, please. Yeah, well, there are only 3 type of processes when you negotiate. The first one is sharing a resource. Is just like a cake that you divide between two people. Okay, you share a resource. You try to get as much as possible, and the other also. Okay, that's one possibility. A second one is exchanging. You have something that the other doesn't have. He has something that you want. So you exchange. You can exchange money against goods. You can exchange a type of good against another type of good, etc. Exchanging. This is very basic. And there is a third one, which is, I would say, a more sophisticated process, which is formulating. It means you don't just negotiate, but you build up the framework of the negotiation in such a way that it could offer the possibility to play win-win. So it's formulating the problem in such a way that a win-win solution may be possible. In the literature, you often find negotiation or bargaining. Now we use them with a similar meaning, just the same. Let's see the next one, please. Yeah, so sometimes people find out that, okay, say a negotiation is a bit of like a chess game. Why not? In so many ways, because you have moves, strategies, players who try to, but the problem is that it's a win-lose game. By definition, chess is a win-lose game, and we are not necessarily playing win-lose. We better not play win-lose, otherwise there might be two losers sometimes at the end. So this is a metaphor, this is a representation of negotiation, which is short of expressing the deep nature of negotiation. Let's see the next one, please. There are three types of logics in negotiation, no more. It's already a lot, you will see. The first one is single issue bargaining. I have only one issue to discuss. Okay, price, for instance. Okay, another one is a more multiple issues bargaining. I imagine, as I've done it a lot in China, setting up joint ventures. You have something like 150 basic issues to discuss. So that's multiple issued bargaining, really. And the third one is multilateral negotiation, when you have more than two actors into the game. So let's see the first one, single issue bargaining. Yeah, so what you have is typically a win-lose game. Sharing, I take as much as possible from this cake, and I leave as less as possible to the others. Of course, we are in a win-lose rationale. Let's see how we can explore this deeper. Yeah, it's single issue bargaining. What is it when I have only one issue? It's a distributive focus. It's really a competition. I want the most of it, but the other side also wants the most of it. It's what we call in game theory a zero-sum game. My gains are the losses of the other. The gains of the other are my losses. So, of course, when we realize that, there is a tendency for confrontation, of course, because interests collide, and sometimes people start, embodying the interest and fight with each other in some ways. So let's see the next one, please. Yeah, people come, with and I must say that type of negotiation with one issue is a mixed motive negotiation, mixed motive game. There is some cooperation because we need the other. Otherwise, we would not negotiate. But at the same time, there is competition. We want to get the most from the negotiation. So what could happen behind nice words and in this case, handshakes? A lot of things that we will explore in a minute. Let's see the next one, please. Yeah, this is the, no, the next one. The next also, sorry. The next also, yeah, well, okay. We have multiple issues bargaining. It's a different story. When you have many issues, you can say it's a two-dimensional system. You have, of course, a lot of possible cooperation because there are things that are important to you, you want them, and the other doesn't mind so much. It's not that important. You can have a lot of trade-offs. And on the other hand, he has important things for him, and they're not of such a cost to you. So you can exchange trade-off issues. So it's a, I would say it's typically a competition and cooperation activity. It's both. I must say that, of course, when you realize that you have 10, 20, 100 issues to negotiate, there's complexity. It's complicated and complex because you trade off things of different nature. If you make for instance, a concession on one issue, you don't know what's the cost for the and the consequences on the other issue and on the overall game. It's a complicated story, but manageable, of course. Still, in this situation, information is essential. Absolutely, it's essential because if you don't have enough information, you cannot really manage the negotiation. If you don't know what are the needs of the other, you cannot meet his or her needs. So information is something quite essential in many ways. How to exchange information? Well, usually people like to withhold a lot of information because that's a way for them to protect themselves. In reality, there must be some trust. If there is no trust, we cannot release information, and then we cannot be very effective with the negotiation process. And going as far as, I would say, win-win approach are considered. Let's see the next, yeah. It's a very interesting one because here I show the two dimension. Let's look at the top one. You have a resource, two negotiators, N1 and N2, and they want to share a resource. It's competitive. Each one will fight to get as much as possible of the resource. Now, if we want to play this game differently, look at the second one, the bottom figure. You take the resource, and instead of fighting to share the resource, you start enlarging the resource. You enlarge it, and then it's much more easy to share, to split. And the second idea is first, okay, how do you expand the resource? By trading off important issues for you with not so important issues for the other side, and vice versa. So you can increase the package, you can find a sort of optimal, Pareto optimal, and that's important for the final result. Another thing to observe here is that negotiator 1 and negotiator two are not facing each other. They are facing the problem. They are together facing the problem. And it's a very interesting element to consider, because what you have is something that we have been drawing from a lot of experiences with the European Union. You know, at the beginning, the European Union was not so elaborated and structured as now it is. At the beginning, you know, the idea was to share resources between France and Germany with a couple of other countries around. And people were discussing how to cooperate. And at some point, one of those who was, I would say, the brain and the heart of this European cooperation, his name is Gaston Monet. He stopped the discussion. He said, look, you just behave as small shopkeepers. You want to grab as much as possible. This is the wrong way to manage. We have to change what? Not just the method, but the spirit, the mindset. And what came out of it was wonderful, because he said, okay, instead of sitting and facing each other and discussing forever, we just sit together and face the problem. It's a totally different mindset. It worked, and finally we could manage properly the approach of the European negotiation. And this is the way the negotiation was built. So we have a very interesting approach of negotiation this way, and very productive. So let's see how we can go much further in it. Next slide, please. Okay, we have a third type of negotiation. I said multilateral negotiations. In that case, well, you have all sorts of multilateral negotiation. It starts by 3, 2 against 1. This is a basic problem. As soon as you have 3, it's multilaterality. If I say the number 15, this is typically the UN Security Council. If I say 27, this is the European Union. If I say 160, what could it be? Another very important fora for negotiation, international negotiations, of course, the WTO. If I say 193, what could it be? Well, of course, the UN. So when you negotiate over multilateral issues, you have several things to take into account. The first one is stabilizing the coalition. Well, what's interesting is to consider, for instance, a lesson drawn from history. Machiavelli, really a master in this type of negotiation, said the only reliable allies are those who benefit from our success. So it means that we have, if we want to keep, for instance, 2 against 1, we have to reward the second one we want as an ally and give him enough benefits so he stays with us. It means that we have to sacrifice something to stabilize the coalition. There is also 2 things to observe. The strategic solution, if you look mathematically speaking, the core of the game is always empty. There is no stable solution. So how to manage and to stabilize? There are 2 ways. One is playing with interest, playing with interest, you use the carrot and the stick. The carrot is you give, as I said before, more to the other than you would normally deserve. So you reward him, that's a carrot. And you can use a stick. The stick would be a threat, punishment. Okay, if he does not stay within the coalition, you threaten that the trespasser will be out of the game forever, whatever the cost. And that could work. There's another interesting thing to observe, the role of values. This is exactly on what the European Union was built, resorting to shared principles. Okay, and there are lots of shared principles possible: faithfulness, friendship, long-term relations, fairness, etc. There's so many possibilities. And these are something that is stable over time. Look at the European Union. We have, of course, ups and downs, but well, it works rather well, the overall. Nobody has never imagined it would work so well, and it would still there after so many years. Okay, let's see the next slide, please.
Professor Fall, sorry to interrupt, but I think your camera just fell off. So would you like to fix it before you continue?
You cannot see me. I have to
No.
change.
Non, je me tire.
Faut que j'arrête.
Non, je me tire.
J'arrête.
Je me tire, je te regarde.
I'm sorry, but there's a problem with the camera.
Oh, no problem then.
Help it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. What you have is sometimes, normally you have a coalition, but sometimes people fight each other. They fight each other instead of fighting the enemy, and you have to be careful not to get into that type of game, which is very typical of coalition games too. Let's see the next slide, please. Okay, see this animal. It's a very interesting animal. It's a triceratops. It's an animal that was, in the very old days, and it was equipped in such a way that you would think it's impossible to destroy such an animal because it has all the weapons to fight. It has a shield, and the skin was maybe 5 centimeters thick. You might think that if people go into a negotiation room with such a mindset, they would always win. Not at all, not at all. Just because this animal is no more on the surface of our planet. This animal is no more. And the small ones are still there, like lizards, etc. So what do we draw from that? The point for a negotiator is not to be strong, to be tough. I would say don't play tough, but play smart. Smart is so much better than toughness. And let's see what could be the win-win techniques. Let's see next slide, please. Yes. Well, how to play win-win, really? It's not enough to say win-win, win-win. It's first of all issues design, which means that we have to make a list of issues that will be negotiated and a list that will be enough to have possibilities for trade-off. If I have a list of 2 or 3, maybe there is not much of a trade-off possible. If I have a list of 10 issues to negotiate, maybe that would be much easier. The more issues, you might think it's a little bit counterintuitive. You might think that, okay, so many issues, so much work, so many troubles. No, the more issues you have, the more easy it's going to be to trade off and find some possibilities for win-win. So issue design, enough issues. Second, if they all have the same value, this is like if you had just one issue, it's not worth trying to work from that point. You have to rank priorities. You have make, for instance, a list. What's vital for you, what's important, and what's not so important. And then, of course, you start making concession on what's not important. And maybe sometimes you'll have to go to important ones, but not vital ones. So that's a way to organize your own strategy when you negotiate. The next one, exchanging information. I spoke a little bit about it before, and I want to develop that in a minute. You have to know about the other. You have to know something about his needs. He has to know something about your own needs also. You have to do that with not exposing yourself too much. That's important too. And at the end, you have to globalize, which means that you have to exchange concessions at the end. You have to exchange concession. It means that you cannot just negotiate issue one by one and close the deal. No, no. After you have discussed on which issue and find a sort of compromise, then you have to go around and exchange issues, trade off, exchange concession. And that's going to be a way for you to optimize and through globalization. Let's see the next one, please. Yeah, they're win-win, a lot of win-win. You know, people think it's a fashionable formula, win-win. It's a kind of mantra for negotiators sometimes. But, well, you look at that, some are winning more than others in that case. So what do we do? It's typical example for the WTO, for instance. They are great winners. Mathematically speaking, everybody is winning from WTO, but some are winning a lot, like China, and some are winning very little. I will not mention any country in that case, but we have to take care that win-win means many things, and that if people consider not what they won, but the difference between what they've been winning and what the other has won, in that case, the mindset is no more win-win. They will understand it as win-lose, of course. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, I like this one especially. You know, donkeys, usually all over the world, they have a very bad reputation. They are stubborn. You can't do anything with them. But in reality, this is going to show you how to turn a lose-lose game into a win-win game. Through what? Through cooperation. So let's see the top. At the top, we have what? 2 donkeys with a rope and a stack of hay on each side. Of course, they have opposite objectives. So they try to eat their stack of hay. And of course, because the rope is too short, they cannot. So you know what they do usually? They do like everybody does. They make an effort in it. They push harder, harder, harder. But after some time, they would strangle themselves if they go on like this. So it's really lose-lose. But these donkeys, they're not that stupid. Finally, they start thinking, good, thinking about a solution. A solution is what? An agreement formula. It's a kind of negotiation. And they found a formula. They cooperate. They will eat one side of one stack of hay first, and then the next one. And that's really cooperation. And that's win-win, that's positive. I must say that I like also this drawing because you still have a competitive dimension, which is a reality of any negotiation, because One donkey, for instance, may eat faster than the other one. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Yeah, I want to show you a couple of my books on the way. If you're curious one day to read some of them, this one is about unfinished business. What I did was to study negotiation which were considered as failures. And my assumption was that we can learn as much from failures than from success. So I took, as I do always, I start with cases. I start with the reality, and then I draw observations, lessons from those cases. And I've been finding something like 34 different reasons why negotiations fail. And it's always good to know that before you start an important negotiation. Let's see, then it's all my books are available, of course, on Amazon and anywhere, I would say in good bookstores, as we say. Look at this. You have two negotiators. You have a big man, oh, and you have, well, the small one. You better not be the small one. Huh? It's not that comfortable. But let's see what you can do. What's at stake is what? Power. Power is an important issue. Power is what? Suppose I depend on the other, and he does not depend on me. Wow, of course, yeah, he's the only supplier. Wow, in that case, my position is rather weak. Huh? Still, there is some hope. It's not desperate. I will show you why in a moment. Let's see the next slide, please. You have two types of powers. Objective power, which means the resources you have, the muscles. As I said, it is the possibility of, it's a dependence relation, for instance. And you have process power. Process power is what is based on the maneuvering capability, the brain. A little bit like when you have two armies. I remember one of those famous Frenchmen, Napoleon. His resources were not many, but he had a maneuvering capability that helped him to win so many times battles. So the way you use your resources is as important as your resources are. Let's see more on power. Can I? Yes. You have also something more, subjective power. What is it, subjective power? What the other believes about you. If ever you can make the other believe that you are very strong and there's not much he can do against you, you have won the game, definitely. Another interesting issue is your level of self-confidence. You need to believe in yourself, but not too much. Let's see the next slide, please. You see this cat. Huh? I'm afraid he has a level of overconfidence, which is a little bit too much. Huh? And in that case, imagine if he believes he's like a lion and he meets a real lion, then he will be in trouble.
Donc, il a écrit 20 livres.
So can we have the next, please? Yes, information. I want to say a couple of words on information. You have three types of information: public, I know, everyone knows; private, I know, they don't know, it's just me who knows; and the third one is I know, but they don't know that I know. It's called strategic information. I repeat it, I know, but they don't know that I know. It's strategic information. It's something that you, if ever you can manage to get it, you have a very strong advantage in the negotiation. You know, for instance, the objectives of the other. You know, the concessions he could make, because you have someone who brought you this type of secret information, and then you have a very competitive advantage in that. Let's see the next slide, please. Well, this is a real picture. It was taken during a hostage-taking situation. It's a threat. It's a threat on the life of a hostage, of course. It was in an airplane. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, it's introduced I've been dealing with terrorism. I've been dealing with one dimension of it, negotiating over the freedom of hostages. I published 2 books on terrorists and how to handle that. I must say, frankly speaking, that this is the most difficult negotiation you can think of, because what's at stake is not less than human lives. And it's a big issue, and you spend a lot of time with bad sleeps and more. So if you're curious, it's already published. Okay, let's see the next one. The threats, yes. When you deal with these type of situation, there is a threat. There are many possible threats in a negotiation. Of course, the threat when it's a hostage taking is to kill the hostage. The threat in a normal business negotiation is rather to just to run away, to break off. So the model is the following: you have a sender, a target, and the threat is the message in the middle. You might think that a threat is very interesting to use because it's cheap, it has no cost, just a few words, and maybe with these words, you will get some benefit. Wow, so far, so good. But in reality, it's much more complicated than that. First of all, you need to issue a credible threat. A credible threat is a threat for which is proportionate to the situation. And the second thing is it has to reach the target. If the target does not hear it, for instance, it's useless. And if the target is not able to comply, if it's not in the power of the target to do something, to meet your demand, then it's useless to make issue a threat. Sometimes people issue counter threats. Well, you could say, okay, I receive the threat, I answer by a counter threat. More words, no cost. There is still one big risk: escalation. Escalation is really in view in that case. And people can go very far with escalation. I published a book just on escalation. And the problem with escalation is the following. Usually it's a process that gets out of hands. People, after some time, do not control it. If they don't control it, I mean, it can go anywhere, just like World War I. You know, at the beginning, you had a murder, a conflict between 2 countries, and at the end, the whole of Europe is at war. And we could summarize it by the following: one shoot with a gun, and at the end, 10 million people killed. That's really an escalation. There are many types of escalation. It's a very risky business. Before issuing a counter threat, think twice, of course. Okay, let's see the next slide, please. Yeah, this is the book I mentioned just before, Escalation and Negotiation in International Conflict. I took many cases, I studied them, I try to show how you have different type of escalation of resources, escalation of images, escalation of wording, escalation of many things of different nature. It could be applied today to Ukraine very well also. So it's really an important issue in difficult negotiation, especially. Okay, let's see the next slide, please. Negotiating, this is the last part, but it's an important one because it really relates to international matters, negotiating with foreigners. I like this saying from Confucius, all people are the same. It's only their habits that are so different. There are many ways to say it, and it's a reality. Let's see the next slide, please. Yeah, well, playing chess on the left, the way we play chess in the West, on the right, the way Chinese play chess, of course, with different rules. Okay, let's see the next slide. Yeah, well, you know, what's important, what makes international negotiation quite unique is a kind of invisible Great Wall. Here you have the visible Great Wall, this wonderful thing that you can see in the north of China. Well, the culture is the invisible Great Wall. You cannot see it, but it's there. And it's a major obstacle to effective negotiation in many cases. But obstacles are meant to be overcome. So we'll see in a moment what we can do with that. Next slide, please. Yeah, what are the specific features of international negotiation? Cultural differences, the values also, you know, and every society promotes values that can be different from one society to another. And then the third one is a cognitive aspect, you know, how people see things, how they understand problems. And again, it's very different. What's interesting, it's invisible, but essential there too. So let's see with the next slide. Yeah, it's an interesting observation from Japanese. I try to bring observations from all over the world. And Mr. Fujisawa, Honda Motor Company, it's not a small name. He's telling that cultural differences are a major component of international negotiation when he says that Japanese and American management practice are 95% the same, but they differ in all important respects. Wow. This is essential to have this in mind. So let's see now the next one. What kind of culture do we have? We have the national culture, ethnic, local, of course. We know that you have professional culture. It's another way to look at problems according to the profession. Organizational culture, companies have their own, some big companies, multinational companies have developed their own organizational corporate culture, and it's important. You have also religious cultures. I mean, there are some countries in the world you cannot do ignoring their religion. I think about Saudi Arabia, I think about Iran, where have been also, etc. As soon as you negotiate, you understand that you have no women at the negotiation table. And if ever you come across a woman, you should never shake hands with her, etc. You don't talk to her to avoid problems, etc. That's good to know. Let's see one example I like about profession. Yes, this one. Well, you know, the story is very interesting. We start by the top left, of course. Well, it's just about a swing. The marketing, what the marketing wanted a swing with 3 planks, you know, and 2 strings to hold the planks. Okay, but then it goes to the R&D, and the R&D, I mean, they have to bring their own input in that. So they decided that, well, okay, there should be a better way to do it. And they end up with only one plank and 3 strings. Well, okay, why not? But that's already a change. And now it goes to the finance department. And you know, finance department, they always shrink the budgets. So look at what's left. Just one string and 1 piece of wood. They say that will do the job. That's more than enough. Okay, but now we go to the design. Of course, the design, they have other things in mind. They want something very nice, harmonious, symmetric. Okay, so they make something absolutely symmetric, well balanced. It's in the middle of the tree, beautiful. It has just a little problem. It doesn't swing any longer. So, I mean, those after who are going to make really the swing have to solve that problem. How to solve it? They cannot change the design. So now they have to cut the tree. And finally, when you look to the last picture, this is what the customers wanted. They wanted something very different. So it tells through this small example, which is of course made up, the influence of professional cultures, I would say. Now let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Can you hear me?
Yes, slight problem with the sharing.
You see, I found a way, but the slide,
it doesn't move. What shall we do? I will stop.
Okay, Christine. I can do it. Hold on for a while. Sorry for the disruption. I'll do it.
But very happy while we cannot see the slide.
Is this slide 36, right? Hold on. Okay, is that all right?
Yes.
Oh, Professor Ford, yes, please continue.
Let's move to the next one.
Okay.
Yes, wonderful. This is the influence of culture. There's a lot to say. I'm going to be short because I want that we have some time for the questions and answers. So the culture has influence first on the behaviors. Of course, this is a visible part. How do I behave at the negotiation table? And the second one is communication, language. What kind of language do I use, etc. And it deals with what? Persuasion, problem framing, discussion, nice wording, etc. There's a lot to say about that. And the third one, which is now we get to things that are invisible, the cognition. How people see me. What do they think about me? What do they think about the negotiation? What do they think about the problem? What do they think about the potential of the game, etc. It's a matter of perception, understanding of the game. What am I doing when I negotiate? What kind of game am I playing? And it's not sure that everybody understands it the same way. And the last one is identity. Culture is a way also to build identity. what am I myself? And that's an important issue. Let's see now the next one that tells us more about it. You have here people who work. They're trying their best to meet the other, but they're on the wrong track. So whatever the effort they make, they will never meet each other. And that's the sad part. So communication is essential in that case if they want really to work on the same track. Let's see the next one, please.
It seems that there are some technical problems. Hold on. Okay.
Okay, oh, good. If you can see, if it's big enough to see everything, what you have is the entrance of the major hotel in Baghdad during the war of Iraq. And you have two, and this is the entrance. And what you have is two people entering. One is, his name is Mohammed al-Baradei. He was the head of the atom agency, checking, you know, if there was some weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And he was with Hans Blix. Hans Blix was another expert who was sent there. I published with Hans Blix on the same book on occasions. And what's interesting is these two people were supposed to be, I would say, neutral. And Saddam Hussein was quite Machiavellian in a way, because he asked the hotel to put a mosaic, you know, on the floor. And you know what the head of? It's the head of George Bush. So when people were getting into the hotel, they had to walk on the face of George Bush, which is one of the worst insults you can think of in the Arab world. So it was a way, an interesting way to instrumentalize culture. Let's see the next one. Yeah, you know, when there's misunderstanding at the end, you get a story which is the Babel Tower effect. You know, for those who know the case, it's you know, people who wanted to reach God. They thought God was somewhere up, and they wanted to reach God, so they built a tower. They built a tower, and at some point, God got extremely upset by that and decided to punish them. And you remember how they punished them, by speaking different languages. Nobody could communicate any longer. So it's absolute failure. And it has been shown by this beautiful painting from Bruegel, which is really a piece of art, telling about miscommunication and impossibility to do something positive out of it. Let's see the next one, Culture and Negotiation. It was one of my books about, it's about conflict resolution concerning what? Concerning water issues. You know, the UN considered that most of the wars of the 21st century will be about water issues. And it might be the case, really. And the book is on cultural negotiation, and it tells a lot of cases and the conclusion I've been bringing from that. Next one, please. So negotiators' values is a very interesting part. What you have, values, you know, it's so important. At the same time, people don't come to the negotiation table with their values on their forehead, written. No. Values, you have to first of all, isolate them. It's not behavior. Behavior reflects maybe values, but they are not values. Attitudes are something which is recurring, but it's not values. Values are the deepest part of the personality. What you believe to be right, or what you believe should be considered as wrong. So it's addressed a lot of issues. Bluffing, for instance, lying, bluffing, which is very common in negotiating. How far can we go with that, etc. Humiliation, pride, face, etc. There are a lot of values that are at the negotiation table, put on. Their characters, it changes, you know, from one culture to another. It's rather stable, but not that stable. It changes over time, not from one morning to the next, but over time. And the last one is, it's not fractionable. It's just like Shakespeare said it for something else. Value is met or not met. There is nothing in between. It's not like, you know, a price. You can fractionate a price. You cannot fractionate a value. You can split money, not a value. So let's see the final conclusion of this presentation. Next slide, please. Yeah, values. One is, look, when you look, money. Another one. Next one, please. Yeah. Freedom, another value. Next one, please. Hey, the Tao. Yeah, which is what? Harmony, the balance, etc. Okay, another one. Yes, this is cooperation. Things you cannot do alone, but you can do them when you have several. Another one, please. Yeah, this is the one I brought. It's a banknote I brought from Iran. There's a lot to learn from a banknote about the values. When you look at these, what do you see? 500 reals. You have first priest. It tells that religion is extremely important in Iran. We know that, but it confirmed. The second thing is you see a whole group of people. There is not one woman. It tells a lot about the status of women. That's important. Every time you have a chance to look at a banknote when you negotiate in one country, you learn a lot through that. Okay, next one. So what are the effects of the culture? It's an obstacle. We said it, misunderstanding, conflicting views, etc. But it's not just that. It's not negative. No, it can be positive because if you add the creativity range of each culture, they may combine, they may add and increase the overall creativity. And maybe there are problems that you have no idea how to solve, but another society knows, has a practice and experience in solving it. So again, it's can be very positive to combine different cultures. Let's see the next one. The negotiation concept, yeah. It's interesting to see for each one of us, you, me, what do we do when we negotiate? Is it for us a game? Is it a ritual? Just something that you smartly accomplish? Is it a fight? Am I there to destroy the other? Is it a joint construction? Something that we have to do together? Is it a human adventure? I travel the world, I meet many people, a lot of things happening, it's fun, etc. Is it a social relation, a nice way to make friends, or something else? It's important to know yourself and know what's your concept of negotiation, and then know the other one for the other. And if they can meet, it's fine. If they don't meet, try to find out a way to help. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, it's one of the of my books I love the most. I took something like 35 cases of negotiation, unusual negotiation, picked up in different cultures. It can be Indonesia, Japan, America, Europe, Africa, India, China, etc., all over the world. And I try to draw lessons from them. And there are lessons, a lot to draw. So it's another of my production. Let's see the next one. Reaching the agreement. This is really the end. So let's see next one. What do we do at the end? Yeah, we shake hands. Well, before everything would finish with a handshake, but well, no, except nowadays with the COVID, this is done now. We don't shake hand any longer, and of course, you never shake hand, as I said before, with women in places like Iran or Saudi Arabia. In any case, they will not shake hands with you, even if you make that mistake. So no problem. Okay, let's see just a couple of more things. Closing the deal. When do we close a deal? When is a ripe moment? It's just like a fruit. Before, it's not proper to eat it. And after, it's rotten. So you have to find the right moment. So when is it? It's not easy. You have to get a sense of what the reality of the situation. When your goals are met, if your goals are met, you can ask for a little more, but there's no point to fight forever if your goals are met. Another reason to stop, to close the deal, is the exhaustion of resources. You are sure that the other has given all what he could give. If you're sure about that, there's no point to discuss forever. No more expectation, no more resources, and goal are met. Okay, let's see the next one to finish with. We have to keep in mind one thing important. Negotiation, not annihilation. Negotiation is not war. Negotiation is really something else. And that has to be kept always in mind. Next one, please. A fair deal. We need, when we negotiate, to have a sense of fairness. Fairness is not an easy thing. I will not develop it here, but fairness is about many things. One is equality. Did we make both sides the same efforts, equal efforts? Equal efforts. In that case, equality is met. But is it the dominant criteria? Needs. Maybe I need more than the other, or maybe he needs more than me because he's in trouble. And if he doesn't get the deal, he's gonna be in serious troubles. If I don't get the deal, well, never mind. It's not going to change my life. In that case, there is a new norm for fairness, which is the needs. Contribution can be also another one. What did I bring to the other? What did he give me? If it's not equal, I mean that if it's not, I should reward maybe according to contribution. If people bring more, they should deserve more, just like a salary paid. If you work more, you get more paid, etc. There may be other norms of principles, seniority in some case, people, because they are older, should get more, etc. In some cultures, it's important. So this is some element for a fair deal. I want to conclude with one or more. Can we go to the next one? Next slide, please. Yeah, what's an effective agreement? It has to be win-win. I said it, fair, leaving a good aftertaste, which means a good impression after. If you're unhappy, you carry your happiness forever, and the negotiation would not be as good as you think. You might feel like coming back to negotiate again. Another thing is easy to be implemented. Of course. I mean, people start sometimes to find very sophisticated solutions, but not feasible really, and stable over time. How do we assess the quality of a good negotiations? Because it has been implemented and it has been stable over time. People respect it. It means it was a good solution. And when you look at some problem in this world, there's no good solution yet found. Look at this one. This is a solution, this drawing, but now look at it carefully and try to implement it, which means to make it real. Now you understand that it's not possible. Sure, what a smart solution. And in diplomacy, in business, sometimes you have that type of sophisticated solution, which is not really implementable. Okay, last one. Yeah, this is it. This is the end. I thank you for your patience, and keep in mind the image of the compass, which means just keep the right focus, get some inspiration about what I said. We covered, this is a sort of sample of the many things we can discuss when we negotiate. This is really a big story and a big adventure in negotiating. And now I'm ready to pick up some questions from you.
Thank you, Professor Fo. It's very inspiring talk. For all the participants, you can type your questions in using the Q&A box or the chat box, or you can click the raise hand button so that we can unmute you. You can ask the question for yourself. But meanwhile, there are already 2 questions waiting to be answered. Professor, can you read? Otherwise, I'll read it out for you. So the first one from Frankie. Thanks, Professor Fo, for the very inspiring lecture. In the US-China trade tensions, while China has adopted a win-win strategy, it seems that the US has adopted a competitive strategy with a target to have a win-lose game. Would you please share with us how the 2 sides can achieve the scenario similar to your parable of the 2 donkeys?
Well, you start with very important questions. It's so important, it's going to be difficult to answer to that. What I want to say is that what we have for the time being, I've been for myself, I had the chance, I lived in the US. So I've been, I know American culture, and I'm not American, so I have enough distance to observe. And I know Chinese culture. I've been for 40 years now, going back and forth between Europe and China. And so I spent years in China altogether. And I know, I think first of all is that there is a gap, a huge gap, which is not just addressing interest. There's a lot of common interest between America and China, but there are a lot of obstacles also. I would say one of the obstacles is no one understands very well the other. We often we have caricatures of the other. The way I would say American leaders speak about China is not fair. It's often aggressive, it's provocative, and it's not meant to solve problems, but to raise more problems. On the other hand, China has a different view of the world, and China also uses sometimes methods that are not welcome in the Western world. I would give you 2 examples. One is what's called the wolf warrior diplomacy, resorting to insults, which is very new. I mean, we are not used to that with China. Chinese diplomats were so well trained. You know, the model was always from Zhou Enlai model, which was a wonderful example. I had myself the chance to meet Henry Kissinger, who was really someone who's been negotiating a lot with Zhou Enlai. And Zhou was a perfect, I would say, model of what was Chinese diplomacy. But now we have a more assertive diplomacy, and sometimes, you know, attacks through this wolf warrior diplomacy gives another image of China. That's the first thing. The second is the Belt and Road Initiative. It appears normally as a huge project for cooperation. It's smart, it's nice, it's very, I would say, positive in many ways. But it's so big, so smart, so impressive that foreigners start to be afraid that China is taking such a space, has some huge project all over the world, and is trying to control the world. So again, it's an image, it's a representation. I'm not saying that China is really trying to control the world, but this is the image that comes up from those different types of actions. So there is a gap, which is a sort of cognitive gap, I would say, between the US and China. They play still sometimes cooperative. Of course, there is still a lot of win-win, but there is also win-lose mindset, and sometimes lose-lose. As soon, for instance, as you spend a lot of money in armaments, it's a lose-lose game. You escalate, first thing, and second thing, this money could be used in a more effective way for other things, for developing the country, for many other things than just building up more armaments, weapons, and military forces. So you have some win-win, some win-lose, and some lose-lose. It's not easy to find a solution for that. It's not easy. One way is, of course, increase communication, increase exchanges. It's fine, but again, I mean, there's some mistrust in both sides. And if there is not enough trust, I mean, the job will not be done. That's one of my conclusions. Trust has to be worked out. We can do that, especially with young people. I think the future of China, the future of America, the young generation, hopefully we can try to train them to understand better the other side and develop more win-win approaches. That's my conclusion.
Thank you, Professor Faure, and thank you, Frankie, for your question. So another question for you, Professor. This is from Angus. Thanks, Professor Faure. Why the negotiation between Russia and Ukraine turned sour, and how Russia and the West or Ukraine can negotiate to a peace for all?
Oh, okay. Again, it's a very hot question.
Yeah, indeed.
I happen to know both countries. I've been to Russia many times. I've been even before to Soviet Union. You know, when you are not young, I had this privilege. I went to Soviet Union, I went to Russia, I went to Ukraine. So I know these countries, I know their mindset. Actually, they have taken two different paths, and they are really getting farther from each other. It's no more the same family. Originally, they have common roots, and they also have a lot of differences. But the differences now are overwhelming compared to the common roots. And there's no more dialogue. You have two countries, who have a problem between each other. One has invaded the other. It's not Ukraine who invaded Russia. It's really Russia who invaded Ukraine, and bombs are falling every day over Ukrainian people, which is always a tragedy when you think about people killed every day. The civilians, you know, they're sitting at home and all of a sudden the home disappears. the building has been destroyed and now there is nothing more left from that. So it's extremely sad, and I must say that there is a lot of to say, and it's sad. Now, looking for a solution, in negotiation, we have a theory, which is the theory of the mutually hurting stalemate. Mutually hurting stalemate. It means that both parties must reach a stalemate, which means a sort of balanced situation in which no army can win over the other. First point, yeah, a stalemate. Second point, hurting. If it's cost so much to each side, they will have to think over stopping this war. And mutually hurting, it means that the wound has to be mutual. Otherwise, it will not work. One will always want to win over the other. So my final conclusion would be that as long as we have not reached this mutually hurting stalemate, the war, unfortunately, will go on, as everyone will think he will manage at the end to win over, which means for Russia, they think that they will win a big piece of Ukraine, and and we don't know how much. They have never said clearly their objectives. And on the Ukrainian side, they believe that they can get back, fight back all what they have lost, which might be also a dream more than a reality. And as long as both will think that they can go on and on, standing the cost of the war, it will go on. You know, there was a theory, a prevailing theory in international negotiation, in political science, saying that the cost of wars will be now so high that wars, big wars, cannot exist any longer. I'm afraid that when we see what goes on in Ukraine, this theory is not yet up to the reality. And so we have to wait for a mutually hurting stalemate, which may take months, maybe many months, cost for everyone. Death is on the agenda, and that's sad, but true. That's my conclusion for the time being. Remember the concept mutually hurting stalemate. This is the key element to keep in mind, to have at some point an answer.
So, thank you, Professor. And anyone would like to take the chance to ask the last question? In fact, the two questions, this can be two the topics that we can discuss in another conference. So there are two big questions anyway. So thank you very much, Professor For this very inspiring presentation. And I hope all participants have enjoyed the presentation as much as I did. So thank you so much. Anyone would like to ask the last questions or any comments on that? Okay, then. So again, thank you so much, Professor. So it's almost 8 o'clock, so it's time to say goodbye for now.
Okay, it was my great pleasure, really, to be in touch with you all. I wish you all the best. Read, think, and move on with those ideas. It's always inspiring. Okay, thank you so much for your care.
Thank you,
And-
Professor, and take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye all.